Joe Biden's decision to run for president again was a catastrophic mistake. It just was. And he and his inner circle, they refused to believe the polls. They refused to believe he was unpopular. They refused to acknowledge until very late that anyone could be upset about inflation. And they just kept telling us that his presidency was historic and it was the greatest economy ever. We just heard him again say that it's the greatest economy ever. Clearly, 70, 80% of voters don't believe that. They don't believe that about their own personal financial situation, but they just keep telling us that. And then after the debate, the Biden people told us that the polls were fine. And Biden was still the strongest candidate. They were privately telling reporters at the time that Kamala Harris couldn't win. So they were shivving Kamala Harris to reporters while they told everyone else, not a time for an open process, and his vice president can't win, so he's the strongest candidate. Then we find out, when the Biden campaign becomes the Harris campaign, that the Biden campaign's own internal polling, at the time when they were telling us he was the strongest candidate, showed that Donald Trump was going to win 400 electoral votes. That's what their own internal polling said.
There were polls showing 80% of voters thought Joe Biden was too old to get a second term before the debate. And then we all watched the debate. And then in the last few weeks, Biden was campaigning, and he said, we need to lock Trump up. He created a controversy over whether Trump supporters were garbage. He said, the weird thing about slapping Trump on the ass. Like, his moments on the campaign trail weren't flawless either.
You cannot.
It's absurd.
It's absurd. Trying to be generous here.
I'm done being generous.
I want to stay for the record. I also think all the TV money should be.
Should be rethought too.
More importantly, the idea that Joe Biden was going to do better in this race than Kamala Harris is on its face absurd.
I actually think President Biden, the whole endorsing her 30 minutes after he dropped out, I think that was a big FU to the party. You don't want me, here's somebody that you may not like, but deal with it,
Suggesting that he's sticking the party with Kamala Harris.
Kind of like sticking it to the man. And I also want to remind our viewers that, the Trump campaign was touting all of these incredible empirical data weeks before election night. What Harris was touting was the door knocking. She didn't say anything really about early voting. Now I know it's because there was nothing much to say.
I asked you what the relationship was between Biden world and Kamala Harris world, and you told me it was bad. It was bad predating the campaign. Where does Obama world fit in this? There's I don't want to break the Democratic Party into these, three fiefdoms, because there's probably more. Nancy Pelosi is a huge power player, but Barack Obama, the Obama world, is a huge player. How do they fit in the tension or the happiness of Democrats?
That's a really good question. I want to point out that they waited 3 days. Michelle and Barack Obama waited 3 days to endorse Kamala Harris. It was a silence heard around the world. And prior to Biden's endorsement that no one really anticipated, they were vetting people like Mark Kelly. Kamala Harris wasn't at the top of the ticket. So Biden's endorsement of Harris caught a lot of people off guard, even the chieftains of the party. I really think it was a big FU to everyone. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. I think I'm getting a vivid picture.
I didn't finish the word.
Specifically when it comes to why or the effect and perhaps the plan on when Joe Biden endorsed Kamala Harris. Really interesting.
You've talked about your interest in having had an open primary.
Yeah.
And as you know, it would have uncovered her weaknesses or strengths. It would have tested her electability. That's what the primary system is intended to do. And it would have also perhaps resulted in a nominee that wasn't so tied to an unpopular president.
Well, it's interesting that you say those things. I don't think that any review of the election should be predicated on weaknesses, but strengths of Kamala Harris. She gave people hope. She caused a great deal of excitement in all of this. It's about winning. You don't have to tell me that. But the fact is, we're set up for what comes next.
Should there have been an open primary, though?
Well, see, we thought that there would be. The anticipation was that if the president were to step aside, that there would be an open primary. And as I say, Kamala I think she would have done well in that and been stronger going forward. But we don't know that. That didn't happen. We live with what happened. And because the president endorsed Kamala Harris immediately, that really made it almost impossible to have a primary at that time. If it had been much earlier, it would have been different. But we're not here to agonize. We're here again to organize on how we go forward. We're going to have fresh, new talent, perhaps Kamala among them, that's up to her, to go forward for the next election. But I think people need a little rest from elections right now. We're still fighting to win the House, so we're not finished with our race. But it's a pretty exciting road ahead, and time goes by quite quickly.
With all due respect to our wonderful people on Capitol Hill, they don't have the answers.
Mm-hmm. Well, Nancy, let me just be clear. I'm going to say it. She ain't going to say it. Nancy Pelosi, everybody talks about how the Speaker Emerita, she's so strategic, she can count. And yes, she did all of that when she was the Speaker in Congress. But my question is, where is your calculator now? Because Democrats are about to lose the dang on House. And for her to sit on this podcast, we'll play the sound about how, it's up to the, I don't deal in presidential politics, but she helped orchestrate, I'm going to say it.
This cycle.
She played in presidential politics this cycle, and she helped orchestrate the very public demise of the president.
That's right.
And thank God for Joe Biden that he came out and endorsed his VP, because these people wanted an open primary.
And for where? And when were we going to have an open primary between July 21st when he stepped down and August 20th when the convention was going to happen. When was that going to happen? And anybody who's suggesting that clearly wasn't looking at a calendar. Neither were they familiar.
I'm looking for the magic wand that apparently the Democrats on Capitol Hill think that we have. I surely hope that Democrats eke out the majority in the House. But if they don't, I think the people that helped, the people that had so much to say about the president and the vice president earlier this summer, I think that those people need to take a back seat. I think the strategists that obviously fleeced the vice president's campaign and made a whole bunch of money, okay, and get no money to the turnout, they need to take a back seat, okay? They got to get the Robbie Mook treatment. Robbie Mook lost in 2016, and then he was up in Harvard and just came back. Goodbye.
And listen, they got to talk to the folks who were actually doing work on the ground, who were underfunded and overstressed, but who were doing the work on the ground, talking to voters. We need their opinions. We need to talk to the voters to really do a postmortem.
Can I add just really quickly? And the Democrats have to stop playing the game of representation as a cover, right, for economic policies that are really just simply benefiting the top rich. So you can put out a woman, you can put out a person of color and think that's all you need to do. There has to be some substantive policies behind that can actually affect the lives of everyday ordinary people. We keep playing the damn game on the Republican field. Let's change the terms of the debate and stop triangulating and playing politics at the margins, because you're going to lose every damn time.
That last part, because that's exactly what's happened.
After a group of pro-Trump students celebrated on campus, this TikTok video showing the group of mostly boys with Trump flags and MAGA hats. School leaders say they kept an eye on things and stepped in when things got out of hand. School leaders say they are now restricting students from gathering in order to keep all students safe. They say students can still express themselves in an orderly manner.
Wait, one person at a time. He's taking away women's health care. What do you have to say about that? I said besides that. What do you mean besides that? There's no besides. Besides that, what else? What else? I mean, that's the only thing y'all worried about, yo. Get abortions, don't have sex. Next question.
If a transgender man says that they are a man, they should be respected. They should be able to have a health care.
No, I'm talking about, I said besides, we talked about the abortion already. Can we talk about anything else that y'all don't agree with?
Immigrants?
Or the Project 25?
Immigrants?
Them immigrants don't need to be over here. We need our money and jobs. What right is he taking away from women? What right is he taking away from women? He don't like y'all. He don't like none of us. He don't even like his own race. What right is he taking away from women? Y'all still not answering. We answered that. You answered for like 5 minutes. What was the answer? Y'all brought up education once I asked that question. Because y'all don't even know what y'all talking about. Y'all just go on Twitter, look at what they say, and just run with it.
You go on Twitter. I watched the debate. I heard everything.
Y'all thought he was taking away abortions. You can't even do that here.
What debate did you watch?
He's so stupid. Yes, please look at the Chromebooks. I want to see what right he's taking. Look right. Let's see what right he's taking away from women. Let's see what right he's taking away from women. Let's watch it.
Okay, let's see what he's giving you when he is.
No, what right is he taking away from women?
Let's see what he's doing for.
Because they said that last time. And y'all also said Project 25. He also said publicly he's not going to do Project 25.
He's a liar. Do you believe him? And he said,
y'all only want Kamala Harris.
Your body, my choice. That's what you.
Why do you need an abortion? Why do you care about abortion? You're in high school.
It doesn't matter.
You're in high school.
Women get pregnant. Women our ages get pregnant.
Is you getting pregnant? Is you getting pregnant? Did you get pregnant once?
I shouldn't have to hear that though.
Are you even you're probably a virgin. You're worried about the wrong things, yo. Abortion is never one of y'all lists. We got wars. People trying to have war with us, and y'all worried about abortion. You know, as they suppose y'all worried about abortion. Y'all not even having sex. Look at y'all.
It don't matter if we would.
Let's focus on the anti-government origins of the civil.
Yeah, let's focus on that. People don't want to talk about how Trump is a good president. What's wrong with voting for Trump?
We could, well, just listen. We could still be friends after the election. I said, no, we can't.
We stopped being friends after these voting for Trump. Teacher.
Wow. He's saying you can still be respectful and that you can still have mutual terms with that person despite others having different sides to others.
He just said his friends, those that he hang with, and correct me if I'm wrong, you said they asked you if they still gonna be cool after this. Right or wrong. So what are you talking about, ma'am?
No, Dan, again, let's not single anybody out.
No, because he said that's not what you said. I'm like, what you talking
said anything.
Everybody entitled to their own opinion.
Right, so I will cut somebody off because they voted for Trump.
He didn't say what he can
You can't dominate the discussion. If you want to have some input to the dialogue, then you have to do so in a respectful manner and to be tolerant of each other's views. Now, just because I think I expected that our country citizens were more decent.
Wow.
What for Trump? They're not.
Yes.
Challenge with the idea of how do you interact with people who you know voted for this, right? If you are an LGBTQ person and you know someone in your family voted essentially against your rights, or you're a woman, knowing that, this man was calling people the B word, J.D. Vance was literally calling Kamala Harris the trash, and said we're going to take out the trash. I know a lot of Black women were incredibly triggered by that. And if you then meet somebody and they voted for the people who called you trash, or if you're Puerto Rican, and someone voted that way, do you recommend, just from a psychological standpoint, being around them? We got the holidays coming up.
So I love that you asked this question because, there is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going to a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood, and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me. And I actually...
Our citizens is not decent because they voted for Trump.
You have your views, and I have mine. I'm entitled to mine.
But that's why you cut the
So
because you don't
if I have
violate.
friends that tell me that, oh, MAGA, 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 I can't be friends with them.
Because he voted for Trump.
Exactly.
What?
You don't get it.
Some people can't have their own opinion. Trump is a good president. Some of y'all.
Talking now about Elon Musk's Starlink being connected to all the voting machines, and then he did something underhanded.
We didn't have long lines after 8 p.m. Everybody got processed and through those lines quickly, and that's due to all of their hard work and dedication that they do out at the poll sites.
Registrar Michelle Baldwin says access to connectivity was improved this year thanks to Starlink satellite internet. She adds early technical difficulties with a tabulator machine were quickly fixed and did not impact vote count.
There's a lot going on. Now we found out about some Starlink connections to the election. Trump said they had a little secret. Votes are being redone. We don't know what's going on behind the scenes, but we do know that there is a lot of discourse in Ukraine and, of course, between the Israel-Hamas war. And I am back on the side of my Governor Kathy Hochul because she vows to protect us New Yorkers from Project 2025. We all know that Trump called Elon a super genius and said we need to protect super geniuses. But what if the real super genius is Joe Rogan? Here's the blind. This A-list podcaster wasn't supposed to reveal what the celebrity CEO told him. Now there will be all sorts of investigations. I fully believe Joe Rogan just saved the United States of America.
Hi, you guys. Look, I really debated whether or not I was going to sit here and talk about this. I thought about it long and hard yesterday. I know that this is probably going to cause controversy, or this is going to cause whatever. And to be quite honest with you, I'd much rather lose and people know than not do anything and sit on it, okay? He sent me a video letting me know that California and other swing states were able to use Starlink in order to tally up and to count ballot votes or voting ballots in their state, okay? There's a multitude of issues with that, and I'm going to explain to you why. And I'll explain to you in layman's terms, because you have to understand when it comes to computer programming jargon, you guys are not going to understand what the flying F I'm fucking talking about, okay? Two things. Number one, why in the flying freaking flap, okay, were voting fucking ballot or voting ballot boxes or whatever, the places where you go to fucking vote, why were they connected to the internet? There is absolutely zero reasons as to why those systems were connected to the internet. Those machines have absolutely no problem tallying up votes like they have done since the beginning of time. Not only that, this is why the numbers don't make sense. This is why the numbers don't make sense. And the reason why I'm going to tell you that is because, first of all, you had guaranteed states that were going to turn blue and didn't. Then you have millions of things that are missing. Now you have people that are all over the United States that are looking up their things and are stating that they were not received or processed. Because this right here is bullshit. I don't care how smart of a programmer you are. You cannot splice your own networking system to do what it's not designed to do. Do you understand what I'm saying? If you don't, again, message me and I'll explain it to you even further. I only have a couple more minutes. I want to play this video for you. If I don't have enough time to play the whole thing, I will repost it or I will send it to you myself. And not like I said. And then the places that he sent Starlink to were only to swing states. Man.
I knew it. I knew it. I knew it. I knew it.
I have had a feeling since Tuesday, and so has my family, that something was very off about this election and the results. We just couldn't quite pinpoint it. We just couldn't put our finger on it. And shout out to all the people who have made videos with information and divulging and divesting into all of this. It's really great informational help. And you know what? It makes sense. It makes sense that Starlink is a part of this, and Elon Musk it makes sense why Elon Musk is in this, why he just suddenly came out of nowhere. And I just couldn't quite put my finger on it because I didn't have enough evidence, I didn't have enough information to go off of a hunch, an intuition that I had. And as women, our intuitions are never wrong.
Trump has repeatedly threatened to prosecute Joe Biden, Kamala Harris, Barack Obama, Liz Cheney, Nancy Pelosi, Adam Schiff, General Mark Milley, Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg, New York AG Letitia James, and that's just some of the people he has talked about. Do you support him using the Justice Department to go after the people who disagree?
We didn't do it his first term. What I support is stopping.
Right, but this is a second term.
What I support is stopping this lawfare, stopping this political targeting, political cases. We all know the Fonnie Willis case, the Alvin Bragg case, and the Jack Smith cases were all driven by politics. The American people understood it. That's why they had this overwhelming win. One of the reasons this overwhelming win for President Trump. So I'm against the retribution. I'm against the Justice Department saying if you're a mom and dad showing up at a school board meeting, we're going to investigate you. I'm against the FBI putting together a memorandum at the Richmond field office which said if you're a pro-life Catholic, you're an extremist.
So I just
we want all that to stop.
I just want to put a button on this. So what you are saying is that all of the times that President Trump said so many things about people that he promised that he would go after them and prosecute them, you were going to encourage him not to do that?
Well, all I know is what he didn't do.
I know, but we're talking about
lock her up. You know, he's talking about his opponent in 2016, Secretary Clinton, talked about lock her up. He didn't do that. He didn't go. But the Democrats went after him.
I know, but I'm talking about Donald Trump's
second
second term.
I mean,
going forward.
I
Since then, he has said many times.
I don't think any of that's going to happen because we're the party who's against political prosecution. We're the party who's against going after your opponents using lawfare. In fact, I think this is one of the issues that the
So it was just a campaign rhetoric? It wasn't real?
Well, I think he's pointing out what's going on. The retribution. Actually, Liz Cheney on January 6th went after President Trump, said things that weren't accurate, I think, in their report. The other individuals he's talked about have been part of this retribution going after President Trump. Never forget. It started clear back before he was in office. They spied on his campaign in 2016.
But I am not talking about...
For 8 years, they've been going after President Trump.
He won.
He sure did. He won big.
He won big. So my question, and what people want to know, is what he is going to do.
I think he's going to do.
Just for example, 2 days ago, he called for investigation into anyone spreading rumors.
I think he's going to secure the border. I think he's going to get rid of this crazy inflation that's hurting middle class and working class families, hurting our economy. I think he's going to get back to common sense energy policy. I think he's going to focus on protecting the First Amendment. I mean, think about this. Did you ever think you would see Donald Trump, Elon Musk, RFK Jr., and Tulsi Gabbard on the same team? They were on the same team because of the attack on free speech, the attack on the First Amendment. He's going to focus on those things that the American people elected him to do.
Let me just say this to Big Tish James, the New York Attorney General. I dare you to try to continue your lawfare against President Trump in his second term, because listen here, sweetheart, we're not messing around this time, and we will put your fat ass in prison for conspiracy against rights, and I promise you that. So think long and hard before you want to violate President Trump's constitutional rights or any other American's constitutional rights. It's not going to happen again.
We've been warning people on the show, Mike, this isn't the same Trump administration. Stop messing around. Don't rig elections. Don't illegally vote. Don't try the funny business, because we know the team this time and they are not effing around.
Who's targeted first?
Well, he's already said that. People have migrants here who committed crimes.
How are you going to find them?
The ones who committed crimes, you go after them. We've had,
but I mean,
Miss
like who actually,
whose daughter was killed. We've had Rachel Morin's family who came in and talked.
How are they going to be found? Is it going to be the military? Is it going to be local law enforcement?
1.3 million migrants have already had their asylum case adjudicated, been in front of a judge, and the judge says you do not qualify under the law. We're the party of the rule of law. Those 1.3 million, they don't qualify under the law.
My question is, how do you get them?
They're supposed to be removed. They have a removal order. You start there. You start with the criminals. You start with the people who've already.
I want to understand. So people say, like, let's say one of these people is living in their apartment complex. Is the military going to come in? Is it the local law enforcement? How is it actually physically going to work?
The Trump administration, the Department of Homeland Security will work with local law enforcement, and we'll focus on the people who 1.3 million already been in front of a judge and said, no, you're not entitled to stay here. You have to be removed. There's an order there, a court of law. They've had their due process. They've had the whole process played out.
So let's move on beyond that population, non-criminals, people who are in the country who are not legal citizens, those who have not committed crimes.
We're starting with the criminal element.
I know, but after that.
1.3. Well, we'll start there and then go from that point. But again, this was clear in the election. This was one of the top issues. President Trump had the greatest political comeback in history. Won 30 states, won all 7 swing states, won the popular vote, won an electoral college landslide. This was one of the big issues. He's told the American people he's going to do it.
I'm not disagreeing with that. I'm asking how it's going to work.
This is how I believe it'll start. And remember, they told him in his first term, he couldn't do certain things. He got them done. I'm convinced he'll get it done, but I also am convinced he's going to start with the criminal element and the 1.3 million who've already been in front of a judge, and the judge says you have to be removed.
Ultimately, will it be 15 to 20 million as he promised on the campaign trail?
Well, we will see. What I know is if you send that message, I think that is so good for securing our border, which the country wants. Just the opposite of what the Biden administration did. Biden and Harris administration came in on day one and said, no more building the wall, no more remain in Mexico, and when you get here, you will not be detained, you will be released, and 10 million came in. So the country rightly said, let's put a stop to that, and the place to begin is with the criminal element and the 1.3 million who've already been adjudicated.
So the last question I want to ask about this.
Obviously, Trump's promised, and you've talked a lot about this, the mass deportation of undocumented immigrants. First of all, do you really think that we're going to see him round up and deport upwards of 11, sometimes he's put the number as high as 20 million people out of the United States? Is that really going to happen?
Donald Trump's campaign promise was the largest mass deportation in American history. And he's going to keep that promise. And I'll tell you, let's just start very pragmatically here. I think most Americans agree with this. You take the number of people who have entered the country just in the last 18 to 24 months. That's millions of undocumented immigrants, illegal migrants, who have really no place in this country. Anybody who's committed a crime. Automatically, that already is the largest mass deportation in American history. Now take that to the next level. Not an iota, not a cent of government spending should go to subsidize this, not to sanctuary cities, not to federal aid to people who are in this country illegally. And we're going to see a large number, by the millions, of self-deportations as well. And so these are pragmatic places to start that would give us, yes, the largest mass deportation in American history.
But fall far short of 11 million or more.
We're going to go step by step aggressively. Donald Trump's going to stay true to his campaign pledge, but in a way that respects the dignity of the Americans who are already here. And I do think it's offensive to use, when we have $34 trillion of national debt, government funds to subsidize this type of illegal migration. That's half the problem. And if any illegal migrant is no longer a customer of the welfare state, you're going to see self-deportations combined with deportations of those who enter.
Okay, let's talk about the election, because in the run-up to the election, even on election night itself, Donald Trump baselessly accused Democrats of cheating. As soon as the results started to come in and showed them going his way, he stopped. Silence. Nothing about that. I haven't seen you or your colleagues claiming any election irregularities, no rampant voting fraud this time. It seems to me that Republicans claim voting fraud and election integrity when you lose and not when you win.
No, I mean, again, as I said before, this election, I think, was the greatest political comeback we've ever seen. I mean, he did something that even Teddy Roosevelt couldn't do, for goodness sake. And the country...
But you think it was a free and fair election?
No, this election, you just interviewed the Latino, restaurant owner, or a restaurant worker, and he said he was tired of all the woke stuff. This election was real simple. You had back-to-back administrations. We got something we very seldom get in American history, American politics. Back-to-back administrations now running for the top job, and people could do a direct comparison. And they said, we like what we had under President Trump versus...
But last time around...
We like the safe streets versus the record.
Last time around, your leader claimed that there were problems with
secure
fraud.
border versus the open border.
Right, those are policies.
That's what this election was about.
That's totally fair. But last time around, it wasn't so much about the policy differences or the personality differences. There were false claims about election fraud when Donald Trump lost. This time, Donald Trump won, and you think the election was free and fair. You see, there's a little bit of a...
No, I think the Democrats got to ask, why did we go from getting 81 million to getting 70 million? What happened to those 10 million people? Maybe it's not smart to run an election where you have no vision, no record to run on.
Do you believe that
the
2024 election was free and fair?
I do.
And why was it different from 2020 when he lost? Is that the only difference?
No, there were concerns about 2020 with all the mail-in voting that happened. When Pennsylvania had like 2-point-something million mail-in ballots come in without any signature verification, which was required under Pennsylvania statute. So there were all kinds of concerns with how the 2020 election was carried out.
But there was absolutely
the biggest question Democrats need to ask me, what happened to the 10 million voters that Joe Biden got that didn't come out for Kamala Harris? A bunch of them, President Trump's numbers were right up where they were in 2020, but the Democrats were much lower. I think it's because they had no vision, no record to run on, and they just wanted to call everyone names. Turns out when you tell people, you're fascist, racist, deplorable garbage, they don't like that. And then when you use lawfare to go after their candidate, they don't like that either. That's why they came out. So on top of the economy, on top of the price of gas, on top of the inflation, that's why they voted for President Trump.
We're out of time. I just want to say, for the record, that there was no evidence of widespread fraud in 2020. It went through many, many different court cases. And I do think the name calling,
that's what I was concerned about.
The name calling was very strong on the Republican side of the aisle from the former president, and you know that. So thank you for being here. Appreciate you going through all of this.
You bet.
I think part of what Donald Trump did is that he leaned into a lot of the institutionalized misogyny as a way to try to neutralize her her effectiveness. So she was a super effective speaker, really galvanized voters in a really important way. And what the Trump campaign did, and I think ultimately they were able to, was they flooded the internet with over-sexualized images of her. They spread lies about her romantic history, and they attacked her husband too, right? They sort of did a full court press on the institutionalized misogyny that is very much a part of American life, and they brought that out. And you'll remember, he ran this bros campaign, right? A campaign that was largely sort of anti-woman in a way.
That is my question. I'll start with you.
Joe Biden's been a phenomenal president. He's lived up to so many of the promises he's made. There's one promise left that he could fulfill, being a transitional figure. He could resign the presidency in the next 30 days, make Kamala Harris president of the United States. He would absolve her from being able to from having to oversee the January 6th transition, right, of her own defeat. And it would make sure that it would dominate the news at a point where Democrats have to learn drama and transparency and doing things that the public want to see is the time. This is the moment for us to change the entire perspective of how Democrats
Okay, this has now jumped from an internet meme to a Sunday morning show.
Jamal's out here right now.
Congratulations.
Season of House of Cards.
I thought you were going to say, what about the Supreme Court? That's also out there.
Well, the Supreme Court might happen. I don't know if it will, but I think this is something that's...
I'm not sure people understand the pain and the suffering of those of us who are white men in this country. I'm not sure people understand what it means to stay strong. I'm not sure people understand what it means to have your back against the wall.
Vince would retire immediately. Biden would have to nominate a successor. They would have to figure out how to bring enough senators on board, dodge whatever obstructions, and get it all on the floor. No room for error or delay. What do you think about that, Bakari?
No, I think that's actually a very good plan. I think it's something that should happen. Justice Sotomayor has been a more than able justice. I know that she may be having some personal issues that she contends with while serving on the bench. But, I don't want Justice Sotomayor to be another Ruth Bader Ginsburg in terms of staying too long. What does this mean for the dynamic of the court? The court is 6-3 now. If we're able to replace it with a Biden justice, it will still be 6-3. The possibility of Justice Sotomayor having to resign or retire in the next 4 years is extremely high. You couple that with Alito and Clarence Thomas,
yeah.
then that means that you go from a 6-3 court to a 7-2 court in terms of conservative versus liberal. And so I hope that Joe Biden makes the next 10 weeks as consequential as he can. I don't care about drawing outside the lines or what Republicans may think about it. This is within your purview. You can actually do it, and you should do it. And one more thing, John, is you have a hell of a vice president right there who has a legal pedigree to sit on the Supreme Court and let Republicans go crazy and hate. I'm even mentioning that option.
You floating? Are you floating? This is 7:39 a.m. on the East Coast. Did Bakari Sellers just float Vice President Kamala Harris as a potential Supreme Court nominee?
Not only am I floating it, but I want to stir up everything. I want people's heads to explode this morning so we go into the weekend just knowing that the chaos has not ended just yet.
What do you make of the demographics here? I mean, Trump got 1 out of every 3 voters of color.
No.
Yeah.
1 out of 3.
33%.
No. Really?
Yeah.
When you say color, you mean like black, brown, everything? Oh, well, I think that, people have different issues that they care about. And I think that there's nobody out there that's a single issue voter. I think some of this is a backlash to race and gender and identity politics. But, man, most people, they just care about keeping food on their table and keeping a roof over their head. And I think sometimes people forget about that. I think that they forget about, the working class. And for whatever reason, Donald Trump speaks to the grievances of the working class in a real way. And I keep telling folks, people will forget what you did. They'll forget what you said, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And when you go back to 2020, even though it was a pandemic, and it was COVID.
Yeah.
People don't care. All they know is they got stimulus checks with his name on it, and that's what they remember. And so people think about that. When you have conversations with folks, they be like, I remember how 2020 felt. And they think that they're going to feel that, in this next term.
Yeah, I mean, how do you explain? I mean, he obviously swept the battleground states. He drove up, turnout around the country in Republican areas. But he did much better than he had done before in places like Chicago, Brooklyn, Queens.
After careful consideration throughout this whole election, I've decided to opt out, decided to exercise my white woman rights and opt out. I am not going to any longer have a voice. I don't need to speak. All I need to do is eat. I'm exercising my right to not show up, not speak out, because you know what? Why do I have to? Why do I have to? Bitch, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I don't care anymore. I'm from a level of being despondent and disheartened to just outright rage. It's just like outright disgust. This is the course we want to go. Totally fine. But don't ding my buzzer. When the hurricane comes, when the flood comes, whatever happens. Hey girl, stew in it. This is what you wanted, Diva. When the cost of the lashes that you buy from overseas, when the tariffs hit and all of those import costs shoot the price up and inflation starts to really, and inflation really starts to fuck you up the way it's going to fuck you up. Hey girl.
Something I've really been sitting with as I look at the exit data is the way in which Black people are always asked to step up for every other people group. Like, in this election, 86% of Black people voted for Kamala Harris, right? I can think back to 2020 when the Black Lives Matter movement was in full swing and we were being labeled as terrorists and thugs. They were lying on us and saying we were inciting violence. They were lying on us and saying that we were burning down cities. And we had to defend ourselves. No demographic was by and large, as a majority, coming to defend us. We had to talk about what Black Lives Matter meant while white people got to put BLM in their bio. When there was Asian discrimination happening as a result of COVID-19, people were coming in my comment section and be like, why aren't you talking about the discrimination against Asian folks? And I'm like, Black folks have to talk about Black Lives Matter. No one's talking about it for us. Why are not Asian creators talking about the discrimination that's happening against them? Why is that sitting at Black folks? But because we have to be the face of every single struggle. And so then we get to this particular election and the atrocities that are happening over in Palestine, and Black people were tasked with saying, we cannot vote for the Black candidate because of this. And then you had people turn around going, if you vote for that Black woman, then you are complicit, you are all these different things. And now I'm just sitting here being like, why was that on us? It is frustrating that saving Gaza was on the backs of Black folks. Saving democracy was on the backs of Black folks. Speaking out against Asian hate was on the backs of Black folks. Our own liberation is on our backs as well. So I've seen a lot of Black women say, take your rest.
Black women anti-villainy is one of the best things to come from these election results. No more POC solidarity. It's about us and Black women only, thank you. If the building is burning down, get someone else to put out the fire. We are not your collective help, your advocates. We are not doing that. We advocate for us and for us only, because you have proven that you will not help us, so we will help ourselves. Black Women's Project 2025 is to rest radically, okay? Wild feminine, primal, intuitive rest. We need to rest in our intuition. We need to rest, period. And no sex, because in order to honor your sensuality, men don't deserve to touch you, much more be inside of you. So none of that. I am all for the 4B movement. Like, go ahead. You know, if you do want to have a baby, that's your choice. And I'm for the babies. I'm a baby girl. Okay. Well, not baby. Well, that too. But I'm a pro baby girl. But whatever you want to do, it has to be your choice as long as you're safe. But do not have sex with these men. Get off the dating apps. Delete the Tinder. Delete the, get it deleted. It's low frequency anyway. Get rid of it.
This is a question for Black women. Are any of you wrestling with the fact that you feel sort of apathetic about these election results? Like, I saw a video this woman posted, and she said that Black women are looking at these results and just being like, all right, bet. And that's exactly how I feel. Like, I look at these results and I'm like, okay, cool. Like, that's what you want to do. You. Cool. Of course, I'm horrified by the devastating effects that this reality is going to have on the lives of Black women, Black people, brown people, Asian people, women in general, people in general. Like in the 2016 election, I felt like I had a role to play with white Americans. I was like, I need to help change the minds of white Americans. And this time I'm like, you do you, I'm going to do me, I'm going to take a step back, and I'm going to hang with the sanest people in the country, which is Black people.
I think I have a colonoscopy that day. Colonoscopy, right? And then, King, you have to get a dog wash that day, right? Yeah, I think you're getting a dog wash that day. I have to get a pedicure. Oh, my podcast. I got to record my podcast 3 days before that. My podcast. Watch my husband cook dinner. And scroll the YouTube and pass by unimportant messages. So I don't think I can make it that day to the Women's March. 40 plus years of work I'm going to take off for the next year or so.
So here we are, day 4 post-election. And you guys are on here upset that we've decided to opt out. My question is why? Pre-election, all we had heard was Black women don't matter, Black women are insignificant, Black women this, Black women that. But yet here we are. And all we're hearing is why? Why are y'all leaving us? Why won't y'all include us? Nah. Keep that same energy you had pre-election, where we didn't matter. Cash that check, okay? Because you spoke that into existence. And so here we are, minding our business. Be gone.
And in no other country on this earth could her story unfold the way it has. From a child of immigrants to big sister to McDonald's worker, there is hope for y'all. District attorney, a wife, and mamala to senator to vice president. Please welcome Kamala Harris.
Several months later.
The truth is,
this is just an epic disaster. This is a $1 billion disaster. Jan O'Malley Dillon promised all of us that Harris would win. She even put videos out saying that Harris would win. I believed her. My donors believed her. And so they wrote massive checks. I feel like a lot of us were misled.
And then, Alexa, I was looking at this, the $1 billion campaign, and some of the things they spent, $15 million plus for celebrity event production. They paid Oprah Winfrey's organization $1 million. And they were still asking all of these people to give small dollar donations to the campaign.
The Call Her Daddy example is kind of overall speaking for how the campaign was. There was a lot of smoke and mirrors. There was a lot of celebrity endorsements, free concerts, billed as rallies. There was no substance. And so, the campaign, I think, wanted to coast on vibes, but vibes doesn't pay off your car loans. Yeah.
Hey, Oprah, good morning. How are you, darling? You're looking very good. How do you think the election went?
Not talking about the election. Thank you very much.
Oh, is it true that they paid you $1 million for the endorsement for Kamala?
Not true.
Not true, okay.
I was paid nothing, ever.
What do you think about all the celebrities with their mass exodus?
I'm not talking about it.
Do you think Prince Harry's going to lose his visa now that Trump's president? Thank you, Oprah.
I think that she should keep calling Donald Trump a fascist. And I think that Americans need to keep looking at the rhetoric of Donald Trump, because I don't know why we're even thinking about electing somebody who's talking about putting people in camps. I don't know why why we want to elect somebody who's talking about mass deportation. I don't know why we're having this conversation about somebody who wants to terminate the Constitution.
Don't y'all find it strange that now that he's won, they're not calling him a threat to democracy? They're not calling him a fascist? I mean, damn, on Monday. They're not calling him anything. On Monday, they was just calling him that. I would think that, if you really believe that, then somebody's speech would be about how America effed up and how things are about to be really bad.
He's the most powerful man in the world now.
It just makes you wonder how much of it did they really believe, or how much of it was just politics.
This election, she's good at raising money and she's good at blowing it. But money can't buy you elections, especially when you spend it like she did. She raked in more than $1 billion and is somehow now in debt. The Washington Examiner dug through her financial statements and gave us a good clue why. Kamala's campaign was getting whacked like a piñata, while D.C. leeches hoovered up all the cash. She spent over $50 million on payroll. Trump's campaign spent less than 10. Another $12 million went to consultants, and $20 million went to their little concerts with Lady Gaga, Katy Perry, Christina Aguilera, John Bon Jovi, remember him? They even had to cancel a performance by Alanis Morissette because they were running low on cash. Isn't that ironic? Campaign insiders are mad at the bosses for wasting donor money on concerts instead of ads about, the economy. Quote, they said they were spending to zero. I guess they overshot zero. Ads would have gone a lot further than the pricey celebrity endorsements. One campaign source said people were concerned about their own financial issues, not Oprah telling them America won't exist. But it worked out nicely for Oprah. She got her friend Kamala to pay her $1 million to interview her in September. $1 million. Now, if she thought she was saving democracy, she should have done it for free. Kamala scared donors by calling Trump a dictator, got $1 billion, then just gave it to her friends, and blew the rest on being a diva. Kamala went on a podcast, remember Call Her Daddy? But she didn't want to go to their studio in L.A. So she made the host fly to D.C. and used campaign cash to build a fake set in a hotel room. She spent more than $100 grand to build it. That set, see it? 2 chairs, a coffee table, and a bookshelf. That's 6 figures. Now, we looked at the set. We probably could have done it for around $6 grand. That's without labor. But where'd the rest of the money go? We don't know. So she's still trying to soak folks for cash. 24 hours after the election, on Wednesday, Democrats got a text from the campaign. Urgent. We need help. Donate now. Help with what? You lost. This is how she's going to spend her donors' dollars. Imagine what she would have done with our taxes.
It's a negative one. It's a radicalization funnel. But what they have done in their online media ecosystem is build a radicalization engine, literally the way militant groups do around the world, that takes people from relatively low-level annoyances with the world. Why are eggs so expensive? Why is my kid learning this new thing in American history in school that I didn't learn? And then moves them through YouTube videos, through podcasts, moves them from that annoyance all the way slowly to a full-blown fascist politics. It's an elaborate multi-billion-dollar infrastructure, and there is nothing like it on the pro-democracy side. We don't have when a man is just lost and lonely and not yet radicalized, we don't have the equivalent of Joe Rogan and Jordan Peterson to move that man in a feminist direction. By the way, we should educate men that it's actually really great to live with a strong woman who makes money. It's actually easier. Life is easier.
Text from a member of Congress saying, something else we need to look at is how people are turning to social media, podcasts, and other non-traditional sources for their news, and also news stations that aren't news. And I canvassed in all of the battlegrounds. I was shocked by the amount of misinformation voters were truly repeating back to me. Truly shocked. I do believe this is what caused the collapse of the Democrats nationwide. You cannot win when people believe lies.
Hey, I just want to give some free advice to
the white progressives, particularly white progressive women who may be thinking about marching against the Trump victory, maybe putting back on the P word hats and doing that thing, I would just say probably don't send any of those invites to any black women you know. I'm just going to tell you right now, they're not coming. I'm pretty sure black women have resigned from the Save America Coalition, Save Democracy Coalition, and definitely the Save the Democratic Party Coalition. I think that's probably not happening. I would just keep those invites maybe among your own friends because I don't think they're coming. But yeah, I think black women are now on the Save Black Women, Prioritize Black Men, and prioritize black communities, black businesses, and the black spaces. But Save America, Save the Democratic Party. Yeah, I don't think that's happening.
All the anticipation, all the excitement, all the anxiety, all the doom scrolling, all the manic refreshing of polling averages, it has all been leading to this hour. And we know you have every choice in the world for where to spend tonight, so we're really grateful that you're spending it with us, and we hope you'll be with us through the duration.
How's everybody doing? First time voting?
Yes.
How you feeling?
Good.
You guys doing okay too?
Yes, we're doing great. Kamala Harris.
I was going to ask who you're going to vote for, but I didn't need to. Time voting. As you know, this is where the Harris campaign wants to drive up the numbers to sort of counteract that T in the middle of Pennsylvania to counteract the rural votes that the Trump campaign is expected to get.
And so what you've seen in the last couple of weeks, if this is an audition for managing a complex organization like the United States, Kamala Harris has passed the audition flawlessly. This has been, in many ways, a perfect campaign. And what the campaign is talking about now is the granular get out the vote effort that you just don't see on the other side. On the other side, you're seeing Charlie Kirk going on X Twitter this morning and begging people to vote.
The last week has been a very good close for Kamala Harris, not a good close for Donald Trump. He hasn't been able to fill the rallies. He's addled. He has racist comedians opening. Whatever. It's been a trashy week for Donald Trump.
A few moments later.
But it sounds like the Harris campaign is sort of keeping things tight in terms of whether or not they're going to string people along into thinking this is going to happen.
What they went to that venue tonight hoping to see and witness was a historic election of Kamala Harris to the presidency, was the end of the Trump era as they knew it. And so we don't know the outcome yet, but that is not what they are receiving, and they are being told to go home and wait till tomorrow.
And nothing that was true yesterday about how flawlessly this campaign was run is not true now. I mean, this really was an historic, flawlessly run campaign. Queen Latifah never endorses anyone. She came out and endorsed. She had every prominent celebrity voice. She had the Swifties. She had the Beehive. Like, you could not have run a better campaign.
In Western Europe and in the UK and in the Middle East, people are waking up to this.
Oh, and they are.
I've gotten people from Western Europe who are extraordinarily alarmed and terrified.
May I reiterate, there are 2 of the 7 swing states that have been called by NBC News right now, which is Georgia and North Carolina. None of the other 5 states have been called. At this point, you can see this is the battleground states, Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, the so-called blue wall. None of those states called by NBC News. In the swing state of Pennsylvania, NBC News now projects that presidential contest has been won by Donald Trump. It presents an insurmountable future here for Kamala Harris and for the Democratic ticket. Let's watch as Trump takes the stage in Palm Beach, Florida.
Look what happened. Is this crazy?
Boy, it's going to be a real tough speech for her.
As we try to unpack exactly what happened in last week's election and how Donald Trump won, there's one particularly disingenuous argument that has emerged.
I think one of the losers here is condescending identity politics.
We constantly try to parse out different ways of speaking to different cohorts because our focus groups or our polling shows that so-and-so appeals to such and such. That's not how normal people think.
The dominance of identity politics on the left, which made it push for all kinds of DEI policies that largely came out of the urban academic bubble, but alienated many mainstream voters.
The idea that identity politics was the problem for Democrats is laughable, considering it wasn't Vice President Kamala Harris who relentlessly focused on race or gender, either her own or anyone else's. That would be Donald Trump. In fact, it was Trump and his running mate, J.D. Vance, who ran an identity politics entire campaign focused on men. They have an identity too, you know. I mean, Trump did walk out to the song, "It's a Man's World" at the Republican convention. And again, all the focus on identity politics came from Trump and Vance, not Democrats.
I didn't know she was black until a number of years ago when she happened to turn black.
We're effectively run in this country via the Democrats, via our corporate oligarchs, by a bunch of childless cat ladies.
In Springfield, they're eating the dogs. The people that came in, they're eating the cats. We're talking a lot about Venezuela because Aurora is really infected by Venezuela, but they're coming from all countries.
There's literally a floating island of garbage in the middle of the ocean right now. Yeah. I think it's called Puerto Rico.
We will get critical race theory and transgender insanity the hell out of our schools.
Kamala is for they, them. President Trump is for you.
The thing that I'm grappling with is that someone was elected who ran a campaign that was openly hostile openly racist, xenophobic, misogynistic, transphobic, everything. And yet now, the election's over, folks accept the results. But now, how do we move forward when we know there are people you have people in their families who voted for him? They work with people who voted for him. They live next to people who voted for him. How should we deal with those neighbors, co-workers, family members?
How do you interact with people who you know voted for this, right? If you are an LGBTQ person and you know someone in your family voted essentially against your rights, or you're a woman knowing that, this man was calling people the B word, J.D. Vance was literally calling Kamala Harris the trash and said, we're going to take out the trash. I know a lot of black women were incredibly triggered by that. And if you then meet somebody and you know they voted for the people who called you trash, or if you're Puerto Rican, you know someone voted that way, do you recommend, just from a psychological standpoint, being around them? We got the holidays coming up.
So I love that you asked this question because, there is a push, I think just a societal norm that if somebody is your family, that they are entitled to your time. And I think the answer is absolutely not. So if you are going to a situation where you have family members, where you have close friends who have voted in ways that are against you, like what you said, against your livelihood, and it's completely fine to not be around those people and to tell them why, to say, I have a problem with the way that you voted because it went against my very livelihood and I'm not going to be around you this holiday. I need to take some space for me. And I actually talk to, adults as well as advising parents for children. I mean, I think, I don't think that you should force children. I don't think you should force adults to be around people just because they're your family. I think there's a level of need to establish boundaries. And if you feel like you need to establish boundaries with people, whether they're your family or not, I think you should very much be entitled to do so. And I think it may be essential for you.
Politicizing a natural disaster, what FEMA is warning about.
The only person making an accusation that people are not getting what they've asked for is Trump, falsely claiming that the administration is withholding resources because of political affiliation. That is just not true.
Hurricane Milton victims in Florida may have been denied help for being Trump supporters. A FEMA official has now been fired for telling relief workers to bypass homes with Trump-Vance campaign signs.
They then turn around and go, see, FEMA's not coming to help you because it's a Republican area. And then people go, see? No, not see. You've got to see for the first time in your life if you're MAGA. Donald Trump is a con man using you as his mark. Donald Trump's a ridiculous, pathetic liar.
Well, the Federal Emergency Management Agency is facing major backlash after confirming reports that a supervisor ordered disaster relief workers to avoid homes with Trump yard signs.
What would you say to people propagating misinformation about the emergency response to these storms?
Stop politicizing FEMA.
Elon Musk is hopping about the country, spewing and tweeting political falsehoods and attacking FEMA while claiming his desire to help the hurricane victims with free Starlink access to the internet.
Donald Trump is literally putting lives at risk right now. If you can't trust FEMA and trust basic weather reports, for example, which he's questioned in the past.
Elon Musk, the richest man in the world and top Trump ally, has also pushed lies about the hurricane to his millions of followers on the social media platform he owns.
When were you notified? Because the Daily Wire said there was a whistleblower who made this point. Go ahead.
I was notified after I demobbed. The next morning, they told me verbally I was fired, but they never provided me anything in writing stating that I was fired. They all alleged that these actions were made on my own recognizances and that it was for my own political advances. However, if you look at the record, there is what we call a community trend. And unfortunately, it just so happened that the political hostility that was encountered by my team, and I was on 2 different teams during this deployment, they just so happened to have the Trump campaign signage. FEMA always preaches avoidance first and then de-escalation. So this is not isolated. This is a colossal event of avoidance, not just in the state of Florida, but you will find avoidance in the Carolinas. Senior leadership will lie to you and tell you that they do not know. But if you ask the DSA crew leads and specialists what they are experiencing in the field, they will tell you. Demand for FEMA to give you those incident reports. They will substantiate what is happening to us in the field.
Vote for Kamala. I'm nonpartisan. FEMA did not give me fairness. They violated their own values. They know homes are being skipped due to political hostile encounters. So when you say you didn't vote for Vice President Kamala Harris, did you not vote at all in this election?
Correct.
They say you skipped the homes. And so when you talk about the incident reports, have you released those publicly? Have you released the report saying this is where I notified FEMA executives of these particular homes and how they were hostile to our workers?
So I have not relinquished any reports. And any time that we relinquish reports, we do not state specific homes due to PII. What we do is we discuss community trends. So if we are noticing, for example, on Mary Street, you'll find 3 or 4 homes that we tried to canvass, and we were greeted with unwelcomed arms, or people are coming out with guns blazing or screaming at us, then that's a street we need to avoid altogether.
This was a text message that you sent us where one of the folks out there said, "Good morning, LeGros Road is politically hostile. We are not canvassing this street any further. Moved on to North Lakeview Road. Great decision. Thanks for the update."
Exactly. So my senior leadership was aware of the amount of encounters that was going on in the field. Again, this was my second time and a second crew in Florida and experiencing unwelcomed behavior from the residents. Now, not all Floridians have been unpleasant, but for the most part, the ones that are very passionate about their disdain for FEMA, they have no problem expressing it.
So walk us through this. You also sent us this, and it says how it works. Purple paint marks. Property owners can paint vertical lines of purple paint on trees or posts along the perimeter of their property. It said why it's important for safety, clear boundaries, avoiding accidents. The purple paint clearly communicates that entry onto the land is prohibited without permission, reducing the risk of trespassing-related confrontations. So explain to us what this means, what this is.
It means they can shoot you. If they don't have the sign up that says that they will shoot you, purple rocks and painting of trees means that you are likely to be shot. It means you're unwelcome. Do not come.
So
and they mean that by FEMA is very well aware of the incidents that take place, not just with my crew, but with all of the crews in the state that's declared. And instead of just saying, hey, this is how we're going to mitigate it to protect our people, they decided to fire me and make sure Donald Trump knows that they are loyal to him because they fear retribution. The important thing is here, once we start seeing a trend, for example, if they just so happen to have these Trump campaign signs in front of their home, and that's the characteristic that's coming along with that, we have to proceed with precaution. So avoidance first and then de-escalation. And that's the thing. Our superiors know that. We have constant conversations about keep your people safe. If your people are uncomfortable, then just don't go. That if your team is uncomfortable and they do not feel safe, do not go to those homes. Go and canvass the other homes. Your job is to keep these people safe. They need to be able to go back home safe.
Okay, so now I have to ask this because, again, I use the example, 20 homes on the street, 8 of the homes have Trump signs, and they face hostility from three of those homes, which means there are 17 homes left.
Right.
So
we will canvass the ones that do not have the community trend with the Trump campaign's signage and let it go. If any of those residents come outside that have the Trump campaign signage and they say, hey, I want to register, we'll welcome them arms. We will let you register. Great, wonderful. But we will not subject our people to continuous verbal abuse or hostile encounters.
So
that's not what we do.
That's what I need to know. So, but again, though, this is what I'm trying to understand here. If there are 20 homes on the street, 8 have Trump signs, and you encounter hostility from 3, how do you then, and if you say, I'm moving on from this street, well, what happens to the other 17 homes on that street?
So the ones that do not have the trend, you got to watch what you're saying, because you're saying the ones without the Trump campaign signage. If those are the ones that we have experienced the consistent hostility from, then those are the ones that we're going to avoid. Our equity in DSA is canvassing and registering, so we're going to take care of those other homes on the street. But we're going to avoid the ones that meet the community trend of political hostility, and they just so happen to have campaign signages in their front yard.
So there are examples as well of individuals where there were no Trump signs, there were no Harris-Biden signs, there are no signs at all, and your teams face hostility, and y'all made the exact same decision to move on.
Yes, sir.
So when you look at how Republicans and MAGA is trying to play this as, she skipped the Trump vote, how do you respond to that?
I respond to it in the same fashion that I'm going to respond to you now. If you greet any of our team members with hostility or aggression, we will de-escalate and disengage and move on. We cannot take that risk to deal with that type of behavior.
I feel as though I'm one of the only voices speaking out. And if we do not confront the lessons of election night, it's going to happen over and over again. We're going to keep losing. If we don't recognize a rightward shift of America, we are also going to lose. We have to have a careful financial accounting of what exactly happened. How did we possibly blow through $1 billion in just 3 months? It's just astounding, not just to me, but to many of my fellow donors. I've been speaking with them on an hourly basis. People are just completely shocked and just craving answers. A lot of them are sending me messages of support, asking me to stay the course and to keep asking. And we just haven't really gotten any explanation from the campaign as to what happened. And I say this, it pains me to say this, This is very hard for me to say because these are my friends. These are these are people that I've worked with for a long time. But if we don't have any accountability, how could we possibly move forward in an effective way, not only to serve this party, but serve our country?
At the same time, got to pay attention to the campaign that flopped big, and that was Kamala Harris. And it appears the biggest flop not only was just the vote total, but it actually was a lot of the money decisions that were made inside the campaign. So we have curated now a list. It appears that the Kamala Harris campaign, despite raising over $1 billion, still ended up some $20 million or so in debt and is now currently fundraising, still asking people for money after she lost. Let's put this up there on the screen. So this is an example of one of the emails that she's been sending out now. She says, first and foremost, we want to acknowledge the fear, the confusion, the sadness many of you are feeling at this moment. For others, you may be looking for something meaningful and important to channel your emotions. If that's you, then we're asking you to make a donation to the Democratic Party today. Here's why this is important. As you read this, there are U.S. Senate and House races that are too close to call or within the margin of recounts. They all need your help to get across the finish line. So can you please rush a contribution to the Harris Fight Fund program today? Does anyone want to name like a high-profile race other than Pennsylvania that's not in recount territory? That's right. So this is a grift. Let's all be honest. Let's put this up there on the screen from Newsweek. It appears that there is a significant amount of debt within the Harris-Walz campaign, enough so, possibly up to the sum of some $20 million. And people are starting to ask major questions about how some of that got spent.
Happy 70th birthday, Rev. Happy birthday. I celebrate the day you were born. You have been, over all of your years, such an extraordinary leader. You are a voice of truth, a voice of conscience, a voice of practicality around what we must address and what we can do. And I thank you so much for your friendship. Happy, happy birthday.
I have to ask you about your opponent. He used a very ugly term about you last night, using the S word as vice president. And how do you react to this kind of street talk from someone who wants to be president again, that was president? I've known you a long time, and I know you have thick skin, but I'm not asking you as a person, because I know you're used to that. But what does it do, in your opinion, to the standards we're setting for our young people all over the country when we're using this kind of locker room street talk about an opponent for president of the United States?
So the American people deserve so much better. That's how I come at it. And to your point, the president of the United States must set a standard, not only for our nation, but understanding the standard that we as a nation must set for the world. You know, we as representing the United States of America walk into rooms around the world with the earned and self-appointed authority to talk about the importance of democracy, rule of law, and have been thought of as a role model, imperfect though we may be, but a role model of what it means to be committed to certain standards, including international rules and norms, but also standards of decorum. And what you see in my opponent, a former president of the United States, really is, it demeans the office. And I have said, and I'm very clear about this, Donald Trump should never again stand behind the seal of the President of the United States. He has not earned the right. He's not earned the right. And that's why he's going to lose.
Let's go to some good news. As a result of the US election, CNN have started laying off staff, and MSNBC have lost a huge chunk of their audience. CNN, back in 2016, their election coverage had 13.3 million viewers. But at the most recent election, just a week ago, they went from 13.3 million viewers in 2016 to just 5 million viewers. Oof. Fox News, by comparison, had twice that many people tuning in to their election coverage. It seems like people didn't want to watch election coverage from people who'd spent 4 years lying to them. In fact, I suspect about half of the audience that did tune into CNN were people like me who just wanted to see how they were doing because we were concerned about their mental health as results started to come in. MSNBC primetime viewership has decreased by 54% in the days after the election, while Fox viewership for the same primetime slot has gone up 61%. Again, I can't imagine why people don't want to tune into MSNBC right now. I mean, who doesn't want to turn on the television and hear that you're racist and misogynist and watch TV hosts crying? So this is more good news from the election. The progressive left media have absolutely shot themselves in the foot with their lies, with their carry-on. And I had to laugh today with CNN. They published this article on their website. It was headed, Trump's win, I like this, Trump's win was real, but not a landslide. I like the fact that I have to put in, it was actually real, it was real, but not a landslide. I mean, it was the biggest electoral college win by a Republican in 36 years, the biggest popular vote by a Republican ever. Yeah. He won the House, he won the Senate, he won every swing state, and CNN said, but it wasn't a landslide. They're trying to convince us that their predictions
actually, if you look at Grover Cleveland, second. Hi, everyone. I have loved connecting with all of you on Twitter and then on X for all of these years. But it's time for me to leave the platform. I once believed that it was a place for honest debate and discussion, transparency and free speech. But I now feel it does not serve that purpose. In addition, starting this Friday, November 15th, X is implementing new terms of service, which among other things states that, quote, all disputes be brought exclusively in the U.S. District Court for the Northern District of Texas or state courts located in Tarrant County, Texas, end quote. The full terms of service can be found on my written statement or on the X website. Now, as the Washington Post recently reported on X's decision to change the terms, this, quote, ensures that such lawsuits will be heard in courthouses that are a hub for conservatives, which experts say could make it easier for X to shield itself from litigation and punish critics. I think that speaks for itself. You can find me on YouTube at The Don Lemon Show, or on TikTok and Facebook at Don Lemon, and on Instagram and Blue Sky at Don Lemon Official. I hope you will join me there. Thanks.
Scott, do you think Biden was a key factor in Trump's victory?
Of course. I mean, he's had an under 40% approval rating since August of 2021. The American people have been very unhappy with him. But on top of that, what I find particularly troubling is that all these Democrats who are now looking back on Biden and, oh, he shouldn't have run, he shouldn't have done this. These are the same people who are all too happy to go on television every day and tell us that Joe Biden was sharp as a tack, everything was fine, he was up to everything. And we now know there's huge amount of evidence that he wasn't, that he really was diminished, that he really wasn't up to the job. And yet they were pushing that campaign forward anyway. They finally dumped him after the debate when they couldn't hide it anymore. To me, the reckoning here is, when did everybody know Joe Biden was diminished? Why did they lie for so long? And are we going to get a full accounting of that? So I don't think Democrats have anyone to blame here but themselves. Joe Biden's going to go down in history as a pretty terrible president, I believe. And on top of that, if you're a Democrat, you think about how he ran his campaign the first time. I'm running to restore the soul of the nation, to rid us of Trump and Trumpism. Today, Donald Trump is stronger than he's ever been, more popular, and his agenda is ascendant in our politics. It is a complete and total political failure.
I mean, Van, that last...
The rest of these people have become pathetic. I mean, they stopped being comedians and they started becoming political activists. I mean, Jimmy Kimmel out here crying. I mean, it's pathetic. And so my question is, if you're going to have a late night comedy show, at some point people might expect it to be funny and not just a constant political screed against one party. And I don't know that this activism for 4 more years is sustainable. If you're going to market something as comedy, but the actual product is nothing more than sort of lowbrow political
These people
activism.
represent the way a lot of people feel. So it would actually be interesting if the Trump folks could actually make us feel like we're not going to take away your rights. And that doesn't make sense. You think it doesn't make sense. A lot of people think that actually makes sense. That is the way a lot of people
Yeah,
feel.
that is their audience.
Is that their mission, to be activists and not comedians?
Well, sometimes the comedian does stop telling jokes and say serious things. And generally, a real comedian will have a serious moment in an hour-long set where I'm talking to you as a human to human, and then come in with a joke. But yes, comedians absolutely have the right to say serious, real things about the world. That has been a part of comedy forever, that we can say things that the average person wouldn't say.
Just one other point. During the Biden years, there was nobody that provided more comedy fodder possible than Joe Biden. I mean, he was a walking...
He was made fun of.
He was absolutely not.
He was left
alone. Harris was left alone.
No.
They got nothing. They didn't get 10% of what they deserved. You want to have confidence in the current leadership of the Pentagon and the way the defense situation has been operating for the last several years. I mean, from the Afghanistan pullout, which was an extreme debacle for which no one was held accountable. We've had spy balloons flying over the United States. We built a $300 million pier as a public relations stunt, which wound up killing an American service member. I'd say I've had just about enough of the so-called insiders running the Defense Department. I think you ought to give Pete Hegseth a chance, because he's got two insiders. All the criticism of him is that he's not the expected Washington pick. And I'm just saying to you that the American people just voted against the expected Washington pick. So he's got 20 years in service, Afghanistan, Iraq, 2 Bronze Stars, Princeton, Harvard. Yeah, he's on TV, but so are the rest of us.
By the way,
I think he ought to be given a chance.
Y'all listen to this.
Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you.
So in other words, reparations for white people. Any comments on that, Trump likes?
Folks, I can't believe I'm about to say this, but I think there's going to be a lot of days like this in the Trump administration in the next 4 years. I'm not making this up. Trump just announced that he's for reparations for white people. Yep, that's right, because white people have been so oppressed, right? He says he will ask the Justice Department to penalize colleges that consider diversity, equity, and inclusion and fine them so he can pay restitution to white people, his base, who considers the real victims of racial discrimination. That's right, because the real victims of racial discrimination are white people, right? They're not black people or brown people or minorities in this country. Let me ask you all a question. I'm white. I don't think I've ever been the victim because of the color of my skin. Have you? Have you? I mean, do any of these people have black friends, minorities that are friends? I just think this is Project 2025 on steroids, and this is what we're going to see from Donald Trump over the next several years.
Oh my gosh, Donald Trump wants reparations for white people?
And getting their money's worth. Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination.
Reparations, but for white people. This is America. You voted for it.
Y'all remember when 45, who will soon be 47, said he was going to dismantle the Department of Education? Well, there's a video going around showing that he's going to provide restitution to those families who have been impacted by DEI. Remember all of y'all that said that they couldn't vote for Kamala Harris because she would not give black people reparations? Remember that? And remember how I posted that video that's still up from 4 years ago where the GOP said that they will never give reparations to black people because they themselves never owned slaves? Guess what they about to find reparations for white people from? Oh, it just gets dumber and dumber.
Tuition costs at colleges and universities have been exploding, and I mean absolutely exploding, while academics have been obsessed with indoctrinating America's youth. The time has come to reclaim our once great educational institutions from the radical left, and we will do that. Our secret weapon will be the college accreditation system. It's called accreditation for a reason. The accreditors are supposed to ensure that schools are not ripping off students and taxpayers, but they have failed totally. When I return to the White House, I will fire the radical left accreditors that have allowed our colleges to become dominated by Marxist maniacs and lunatics. We will then accept applications for new accreditors who will impose real standards on colleges once again and once and for all. These standards will include defending the American tradition and Western civilization, protecting free speech, eliminating wasteful administrative positions that drive up costs incredibly, removing all Marxist diversity, equity, and inclusion bureaucrats, offering options for accelerated and low-cost degrees, providing meaningful job placement and career services, and implementing college entrance and exit exams to prove that students are actually learning and getting their money's worth. Furthermore, I will direct the Department of Justice to pursue federal civil rights cases against schools that continue to engage in racial discrimination and schools that persist in explicit, unlawful discrimination under the guise of equity will not only have their endowments taxed, but through budget reconciliation, I will advance a measure to have them fined up to the entire amount of their endowment. A portion of the seized funds will then be used as restitution for victims of these illegal and unjust policies that hurt our country so badly. Colleges have gotten hundreds of billions of dollars from hardworking taxpayers, and now we are going to get this anti-American insanity out of our institutions once and for all. We are going to have real education in America. Thank you.
See, I have to make a post and respond to stupid stuff like this because it's almost like you guys don't have any education skills. Where in that whole speech do you get reparations for white people? First of all, when he says equity, that is white people complaining about racial discriminatory education, about DEI being taught in school, slavery being taught in school. So if white people could complain that their kids are being harmed because they're learning about white history, not just black history, but white history, and how they brought us over here on slave ships to build this country up and then treat us like shit, but then you say you don't understand, what is it that you don't understand? So you guys could ask for, he's going to give you restitution based on the money he won't give schools that teach DEI and equity, so that you guys can get restitution because your feelings are hurt because they're teaching y'all's history in school. This is America, when people just get to act so stupid and don't understand common sense, but we get treated like shit. The fuck?
Nostradamus of presidential elections. Historian Alan Lichtman from American University predicted 9 of the last 10 elections correctly. And he has a prediction who will win the Oval Office in 2024. Joining me now on the morning show, Alan Lichtman. It is a pleasure. Appreciate you.
Thank you so much. And I would say 10 out of 10. I think I got 2,000 right, as I proved in my report to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights. Gore should have won that election, but for the tossing out of black votes.
Who do you think is going to occupy the White House?
According to the keys to the White House, The incumbent Democrats, Harris, the nominee, are down 4 keys. It takes 6 or more false keys to count them out and predict that Donald Trump will return to the White House. That's why my prediction system, with a 40-plus year track record, predicts that Kamala Harris will be a new path-breaking president, the first woman president, and the first president of mixed African and Asian descent. Kind of foreshadowing where America's going. We're rapidly becoming a majority-minority country. Old white guys like me are on the decline.
A few moments later.
I'm kind of in shock right now. I've been
our country.
I've been hopeful this whole time.
I know you've been more hopeful than me.
I think it's gone. It's just not. There's just not enough room to make up. The math isn't there.
No, the math doesn't work. Numbers don't lie. Yes, as I said, things could go wrong. There could be unprecedented events that change the pattern of 160 years of history. That's what happened here. 2 things. Number 1, disinformation. We've always had disinformation, but disinformation has exploded to an unprecedented degree. You talked about a grievance election, but a lot of that grievance was driven by disinformation. Starts with Fox News and conservative media, conservative podcasters with tens of millions of views. But we've seen something brand new this time. The 300 billionaire Elon Musk putting his thumb on the scales through his control of X, formerly Twitter. It's been reported that his misinformation has had billions, literally billions of views. And this has spread to every aspect of this election. There is misinformation about everything about the economy, inflation, jobs, unemployment, the stock market, growth. There is vast disinformation about undocumented immigrants, that they're supposedly killers who are out to get you. In fact, studies by Cato and the National Institute of Justice show undocumented immigrants are the most law-abiding segment of our society, committed crimes and violent crimes, less than half that of native-born Americans. It spread to the hurricane relief, spreading lies that hurricane relief dollars were being diverted to migrants. It's lies about the Ukraine war, that somehow Ukraine was responsible for having one of the world's great powers invade a 3rd or 4th-rate power. And, as scholars have shown, once you dissolve truth, democracy dissolves along with it. As George Orwell warned in 1984, in that dictatorship, war is peace, famine is plenty. The other thing that's unique about this election is the explosion of elements that have always been present, the dark side of American history, but that have been agitated to an unprecedented degree in this election. And I'm talking about racism, misogyny, xenophobia, anti-Semitism, with a woman of color being a particular target. And these things cross ethnic and racial lines. The first xenophobic law in America goes all the way back to 1798, the Alien and Sedition Acts. And guess who the enemy was then? The French, who were ethnically and racially indistinguishable from the settlers in England. Then it's the Jews, the Germans, the Irish, the Mexicans, the Muslims. There's always an other. And, I can give you example after example of how these issues.
No, but look, we get it. I get the concepts. I just want to test the application with the context of what we saw happen in the election. So I stipulate, of course, and I know it makes some people uncomfortable, but race and gender matter in America in choosing leaders.
They always have.
It can be positive, it can be negative. I think sometimes it's a percentage of both, but it's real. I don't dispute that. There's no reason to be ignorant. However, when you look at this, it leads to a suggestion, Professor, that all the white people came out to vote for Trump and not the black woman. We don't really see that
as I explained,
in the
it's
demos.
not limited to white people. That's
right, because black voters didn't come out. The Democrats lost because they underperformed, Alan. The Democrats lost because they underperformed. They misread the main motivators for the voters, and they underperformed. Black women pulled a heavy load for the Democrats again, but they couldn't overcome black men, Latino women, married women, even though reproductive rights matters, it wasn't everything for them. And you saw it in a lot of demos.